Welcome to Got Grass, conversations with the legends and leaders of bluegrass. You've enjoyed live bluegrass at Guitar Town CT concerts in Hampton, Connecticut since 2008. From Tony Rice, Rouse Stanley, and Doyle Lawson to Tim O'Brien, Sierra Hall, and Billy Strings. Now you can go behind the scenes as we chat with your favorite bluegrass stars. I'm your podcast host, Chris Worth. So I'm very happy to have Ron Stewart on my podcast today. I was just telling him that my wife, Diane, saw my Post-it note on the fridge. She said, "Oh, you're going to have 1 million watchers. You've got Rod Stewart on your podcast tomorrow." I said, "Well, dear, close, but it's Ron. It's not Rod, but anyway, it'll be more interesting to me." I usually start out with a non-music question, which is, on a day off, what would you be doing without me? If there is a day off for you without music, what would you be doing?
Oh, wow. I have a lot of arms in the fire, but that's okay. I actually do instrument repair and building. That might be my day off. My wife and I might be doing gardening. We are huge gardeners. I might be out on my tractor in the woods or mowing. I might be on my backhoe, or I might be in my dump truck hauling gravel or whatever. I'm kind of a Renaissance guy.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm the same way. I don't have enough property to have a tractor or a backhoe, but I'm a big gardener and I worked in construction for 45 years for myself. So I'm kind of the same way. I like to do things and do projects and stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. It makes me want to get back to playing. It's that little reprieve, and you get out and you do something totally 180 from what you do every day. And then it's like, I'm ready to play,
Yeah. Do you have a big piece of property that allows you to like drive backhoes around on it and stuff, or?
Yeah, my wife and I, we have a pretty nice, sizable amount of land here in southern Indiana. So
Nice.
we've got almost 50 acres. So
You can get lost out there almost.
yes, but that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah, I guess that's part of the point. Could you just talk a little bit about your upbringing and kind of how music became such a huge part of your life? I know you were in a family band, like a lot of young bluegrass musicians I've talked to, but can you talk about your experience?
Sure. As you said, I was in a family band early on, with my parents and my brother and my uncle. Um, and that went up until the mid 80s or so. But in the meantime, I met Lester Flatt when I was 9 years old at Bean Blossom. And of course, Flatt and Scruggs were my heroes. From my earliest time as a toddler, I can remember the Live at Carnegie Hall album on our record player. So getting to meet Lester Flatt and being able to, he invited me on stage at Bean Blossom. We did a couple of songs and he invited me to be on a recording later that year, a live recording. So that was just a huge thing for me as a young person, to be able to meet one of my, I had already met several of my heroes, but like to be able to meet Lester, to get to know him a little bit and to play music. And Marty Stewart was actually responsible for that happening. I walked up to Lester's bus, with my fiddle case and was like, knocked on the door and like, "Hey, I would like to play a tune on your show." And of course, Lester was looking at me like I had three heads almost, and which I don't blame him at the time. Here's a 9-year-old with a fiddle case. And so Marty and Blake Williams and I think Pete Coram were sitting on a picnic table in front of the bus, and Marty said, "Hey, get your fiddle out and play one." And he had his guitar there. So I played one, and when I got done, Lester came up and he said, "I think we got a place for you on the show." So I got to give Marty so much credit for getting the ball rolling there. At any rate, I digress. And then I played with Curly Seckler and Willis Spears Um, Fast forward way up into the 90s, joined the Lynn Morris Band, uh, then JD Crowe in the New South, the Dan Tyminski Band. Adam, Steffi, and I started the Boxcars, and then from there to the Seldom Scene, current day. So, but I always had this interest. When I heard Flatt and Scruggs and Jimmy Martin with JD Crowe, all the instruments really, that I had an interest. I loved how the band worked together, and I think that's why I became, in quotes, a multi-instrumentalist. I just loved all the instruments and how they work together, and maybe to my detriment, I tried to learn them all. But it's been a good thing at the same time. Um, when I produce an album, I've got a good understanding of all the instruments, how they work together, blah blah blah. But though hearing that Flatt and Scruggs band and how they work together, that changed my world. I just wanted to learn everything I could about, okay, all of this is really killing me here. I've got to figure this out, which I'm still trying to figure this out.
Just FYI, when you digress, that's what makes the whole talk interesting. So that's why you're here. I don't really want to
Oh,
talk
well,
about I don't want to talk about picks and strings, and I like to talk about people's stories. So that's more fun.
yeah, and full circle on that, I've got to play with so many incredible people throughout my career. I've been very lucky and blessed. And those very same albums that were my very first influences, obviously, I got to meet Lester at an early age. And then um, came to work with JD Crowe, who was another one of my earliest influences from the beginning. And Tony and Doyle and those guys from the New South 044 album, that was a very early influence on me. And then if you want to really come full circle, here I am with the Seldom Scene. And I remember the first time I heard Act One with Raised by the Railroad Line, that changed my life right there too. Um, there was all this interesting stuff going on, especially in the 70s. You had the Country Gentlemen, the Seldom Scene, the New South, and these bands were bringing in material from not your standard places and making it work in a bluegrass setting. And, I think the scene was at the forefront of that. I know JD was, I know the Country Gentlemen. I mean, there were others, but those three bands to me were just this epitome of, like, how do we bring material in that's not standard fare bluegrass, yet make it work in this acoustic setting, and make it acceptable in the bluegrass community.
Right. So there never was any doubt really in your mind from a kid on that you were going to be a musician.
Well, I'm still trying to be one, but yes, it was something that just ate a hole in me. I've done a myriad of things throughout my life. When I graduated high school, of course, I was playing music too, but my dad was a heavy equipment operator and a concrete finisher, and so I actually went to work with him out of high school, and worked that job for about nine years while playing music at the same time. But yeah, music was always something that I had to do. And it's still that way. I still love music as much as I ever did.
Yeah. It's funny because I always ask people that question, what's the perfect day off for you? And 90% of the musicians say playing music is a perfect day off for me. That's what I love to do.
Well,
And I rarely am without an instrument, they say, and I get it.
yeah, and like I said, I have an instrument repair business, and I build as well. So even if I don't have an instrument in my hand playing it, a lot of days, most days, I do have an instrument in my hand. I'm just happen to be repairing on it or whatever, for folks. So you're right. A perfect day it's got something to do with music,
Right,
one way
right.
or another.
I guess we should talk right now about the Seldom Scene because they have a great new album that I think is coming out in a day or two, correct?
It's coming
In
out the 14th, which is day after
14th.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah, on Smithsonian Folkways.
I know the scene also. I know Dudley Connell has left or is leaving the band, and Clay Hess is taken
Uh,
over, which is that's a major. He's been there a long, long time, Dudley,
oh
right?
yeah. Yeah, Dudley, I think joined the band in 1995, same time as Ronnie and Fred. And then they played 1 year with John Duffy, and then John passed away, and Lou Reed, who had been in the band before, um, from '86 until '92 or '3, '4, somewhere in there, came back to the band. Um, so yeah, all of those guys, Ronnie, Fred, Lou, and Dudley had been in the band since '95 and '96, respectively. There, so been there a long time. And
You're
I'm the
not.
new.
You're not.
I was the newcomer until Clay. So
I was going to say, yeah, you were the newcomer and now you've got a new. Clay's played here before, and he's been on the podcast too, as has Ronnie Simpkins. So,
uh,
Ronnie was talking about playing for the scene and how what a great job it was because, the band is
oh man,
famous. They have a huge repertoire, and everybody loves the music, and so it must be a great gig for you.
it really is. And as I mentioned there before, the scene was a major influence early on and all throughout. My pathway steered me in a little bit different direction, my professional pathways per se, but I was always a huge fan of the Seldom Scene. And when, you know, we were ending the boxcars, and neither knew about the other thing happening, but the scene was going to be in need of a banjo uh, player. And so, Lou called me and he said, and I was like, you have no idea, this is like the perfect thing. Absolutely, I would love to be a part of the scene. And um, let me back up just a hair from that. Earlier that summer, um, Ricky Simpkins, who was in the band at the time, had to be out for he had a surgery. And so Lou called me and he's like, "Hey, can you fill in?" And this was like 2 days before the had a 4 day weekend. Um, and I said, "Yeah, sure." And then when I got off the phone, I'm like, "What the hell have I just did?" I know this stuff, but I don't know this stuff at the same time. But anyway, I instantly got back a hold of Lou, and I'm like, "I need a set list like right now, as soon as you can get it to me." So I actually ended up driving. I fly most of the time, but I had to drive. That was, it was right up on the dates. And I had another gig on the way back to get to. So I ended up spent 9 hours in the vehicle going through those set lists in my mind. And when we went on stage that night, just something really felt good. And it was so fun for me to finally get to do those songs that I used to set and play along with. Hey, we're doing this live now. And it was just a great weekend. And apparently I made enough of some sort of impression that when this did open up, that Lou gave me the call, and I was like, absolutely, this couldn't work out more perfectly because um, we're stopping the boxcars, so it's like it couldn't have been a better time. I couldn't be more excited. I'm still excited to be in this band. It's like you said, it's the repertoire is huge. Um, there is so much great material in this band back through the years. And when I make the set list out, and I have a hard time because there's so much material, and you start thinking of that, and you're like, we can't get all this in. If we did 10 shows, we couldn't get it all in. So you're always having to kind of pick and choose, like, oh, let's do that tonight or whatever. But that's a wonderful problem to have.
Yeah.
such a huge catalog of stuff.
Yeah. I would imagine you probably get a lot of requests yelled out too, being who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the, big ones is always obviously, wait a minute, Old Train. But I mean, it's really wild because the request will span from Act One until now. You and sometimes we get caught totally off guard, like, oh, I forgot about that one. I totally forgot that one existed.
Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah. My friend, he lives nearby, Phil Rosenthal, who was a singer and guitarist for the band for a while in the 80s
Oh
and
boy,
wrote a few songs.
yes,
A great guy. Yeah. Yeah. He
Phil
was
is
one of my
awesome.
first. Yeah. He was a great guy. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. I didn't
I
mean to
I,
interrupt you.
I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the scene during Phil's time there. Obviously, every time there's been a change from Starling to Phil to Lou, back to Starling to Moondeer, and then Dudley. Um, it changes things, but that core seldom seen thing never goes away, you know. And it's really wild how stylistically, all of those singers are so much different, yet somehow that seldom seen thing stays there, even with the lead singer changes, or band member changes, that seldom seen thing is still there,
Right.
and it's a testament to that original band's strength of the style that they came up with, the strength of their musicianship and vocal prowesses. It's just a testament to all of that, and material choices, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Back in the early days when John Duffy was leading the band, he was a pretty, I don't know what the word is, a character, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So is there a character in the band now that kind of takes on that role of like Joker MC a little bit? Is that Lou
You
or
know, yeah, I mean, it's kind of an all-around thing, to brutally honest. Fred, all the guys are great. Clay he is awesome at that sort of stage presence. Um, he's just a funny guy, and all the guys, it's kind of more of a team effort now, I would say, versus like John was. He was just this focal point of that whole aspect. It's more of a team effort now, if that makes sense.
that? Yeah, that does. So let's say you were traveling in a foreign country and somebody asked you, what instrument do you play? What would your first answer be? Or would you have to list them all? Like, how do you think of yourself
Um,
primarily?
Fiddle and banjo. I mean, I usually those two go hand in hand with me, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, that would be just my off the cuff answer, because I mean, those are the ones I'm known for, more than any of the others. But yeah, it would be a cut those two. I don't know that I could. I don't know that I would ever narrow it to one. Um, I started on fiddle, but banjo was close behind, and those two have kind of became a part of me. Uh, so I think it would be fiddle and banjo.
Uh, so when you're home hanging out with instruments sitting around and you're going to just sit, pick up one and start playing or whatever, just for fun and relaxation, would you pick up the banjo first, or would that be, or guitar, or what would you choose?
It depends. It really depends. I do a lot of session work in my studio here too. Overdubs for albums and blah blah blah. I think it depends on a lot of, like, what's coming up in my schedule. Um, what haven't I played in a while, or what do I need to play more of at this point to try to stay on top of where I need to be. If we're picking songs or something like that, or maybe I'm trying to write, I'm going to grab the guitar. But, you know, probably by myself, if I'm wanting to just play some tunes, I'll grab the banjo. Um, if my wife happens to be playing, I might grab the fiddle uh, and play along with that to keep some chops up. So, it kind of depends on the situation, maybe, as to which one I grab.
When you're playing live, do you ever have to switch from banjo to fiddle in the middle of a set, or do you kind of plan the sets around or staying in one or the other?
Yeah, when I'm making the set list out, I try to, obviously I'm the one that's switching, and Lou also switches mandolin and guitar some too on certain songs. I try to be mindful of, like, we're not creating a sideshow of me switching instruments every other song, or um, you know, Lou the same way, and try to keep some continuity in the show. But also what you get into sometimes is you don't want four up tempo things and then four down thing. So you have to be kind of mindful of that whole aspect, but at the same time, I don't want to create some sort of sideshow of me just swapping back and forth all the time. So we usually have this segment where I'll start the show on banjo and we'll do 5, 6 songs, 7, and then we have this segment of songs where I'll pick up the fiddle and do 3 or 4 like that, and we have enough variance in tempos there to where it's not just like, okay, everything just went really slow, or whatever. So, but I try to be mindful of that, uh, not just for our sake, but also the audience as well.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, as a bluegrass lover, and I play guitar. Um, One thing that really stands out about your playing to me is that you play, especially the banjo, in the pocket more than anybody else I can think of. And I was going to ask you first, could you define what that means, in the pocket? Because it's a common phrase. People say, "Oh, they're in. You've got to be in the pocket. This guy's playing in the pocket. This guy's not." Can you define that phrase for listeners?
Well, I'll try as best I can.
Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying there. I think playing in the pocket, if you've ever played with a good drummer, um, the beat is defined and it's hard to get. I mean, that keeps you in the straight and narrow. On banjo, to me, when I hear Earl Scruggs, I hear a rhythm instrument in the banjo rolls. It's sort of like that shuffle drum beat going on. Same with JD Crowe. They're just so heavy, rhythmically oriented, and you can put swing in your roll, but still stay in the pocket. Um, but if you're not in the pocket, things kind of swim around, and all music breathes up and down, and that's why it's important that the folks around you and you to them, you recognize what they're doing. Like, how are they pushing and pulling? I need to do that same thing. And then we all stay in this pocket of the beat together. Where you get into problems is where someone's, pushing here and the other person's pushing in a different spot. Then it's sort of like sine waves and they get crossed. They're not
Yeah.
running together.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, to me, that's one of the most important things in banjo playing is is playing in that pocket, in that groove, to help the rhythm section. People don't think of a banjo as a rhythm instrument, but to me, I think of, definitely there's a rhythmic quality to the banjo, and it should be that way. Um, if you listen to, like I say, if you listen to JD, there's a rhythmic quality in everything that he played. Same with Earl. And I think that's so important. But yeah, that swimming around the beat, banjo, uh, it gets terrible to me when it's too swimmy. Um, It's sort of like if you had that drummer and they were moving up and down on the beat, speeding up and slowing down, speeding up and slowing down. And then you think about a banjo roll and all those notes pushing and pulling on those things. It's like, boy, there's nowhere to lock into this. What's going on?
Yeah.
So, but I
Yeah.
appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Yeah. I think I was talking to Ronnie Simpkins and I asked him, I said, when you're playing in a band, the Seldom Scene, who do you
Mhm.
key off rhythmically? And he said the guitar player. I think it was him.
Yep.
I was kind of surprised
Yep.
because the guitar player is he's kind of thinking it was kind of like filling in this middle ground. I think of the banjo as a total rhythm instrument. I mean, it's if it's
Right.
driving the band, it's driving the band. There's no
Right.
other way it can do it. But he said the guitar was what he keyed off of as a bass player. I thought that was
I've
interesting.
got to agree with him. And JD would tell you this the same as I'm going to say this, and so would Earl. The guitar is the most important rhythm instrument for making it easy for everything else to lock into because you have the upstrokes in the rhythm. It's either easy to play with or terribly hard. And it can kind of direct the type of rhythmic feel you're going for, if that makes sense. And I agree with Ronnie that the rhythm guitar is really should be the focal point. But then I view myself as like, okay, I just need to be an extension of that. Um, and when you have a great guitar player, rhythm guitar player, it's so easy, um, and it makes me sound a lot better than I really am because it makes it so much easier to play. But I would have to agree with Ronnie that the guitar rhythm is probably the most important part of how that rhythm section is going to sound, how the feel of the rhythm is going to sound in that particular song, and the style of rhythm section you're going to be able to play. If you think about a boom chick rhythm, it's really limiting in how you can direct the feeling of the rhythm section. If you add those upstrokes in there, it's sort of like that drum shuffle beat. It really opens things up for you to be able to kind of move that feel in one way or another. So, but I do agree with Ronnie. All that to say, rhythm guitar is utmost important. If you think of it this way, JD Crowe played with Jimmy Martin, right? Monster rhythm guitar player. Red Allen, Doyle Lawson, who was uh, one of the greatest rhythm guitar players Crowe had in his band. Tony, you know, you think about the guitar rhythm there and on up into, Richard Bennett and um, Rick Wasson, uh, all really great guitar rhythm players. And, it makes perfect sense.
Uh, I was going to ask you about a couple of your musical compadres, and this leads to um, Dan Tyminski, who you've played with a bunch,
Yeah,
as a interesting rhythm player because he's definitely not the boom chuck guy. He's got
no.
a lot going on with his right hand all the time. Whatever
Oh,
school
yeah,
of rhythm you call that, it certainly works for him. I've heard a lot of players not of his caliber that can kind of ruin a band with that constant chugging
right.
rhythm, right? Um,
Yep. I
what do you?
think to me, Dan is a mix of like, if you threw Jimmy Martin, a little bit of Tony, um, and and and, Danny Paisley. If you threw those guys together and mixed them up, and then there's what Dan is, which is a great thing. It's sort of like you mix all those rhythm players together, and there's Dan. Uh, and he's fun to play with. Um, he's fun for a banjo. Now Dan's a banjo player too, so going back to this guitar rhythm section banjo thing, Dan's a banjo player too, so he kind of he has this wonderful idea of what rhythm feels good to a banjo player, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I've always loved getting to pick with Dan. But you're right. If people don't understand that and actually pay attention and listen to that, uh, you can ruin it by thrashing the guitar too much, and a lot of younger players that may just first when they first hear it, they start playing it, but like, okay, you really need to kind of look at that beyond what you're hearing and break that down. Like, okay, it's not just wacka wacka wacka. There's more to it than that. You know,
Yeah.
same with Tony. Same with
Hmm.
Tony, and the nuance of rhythm is a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, Tony Rice always was my music hero, and he's well known for so many parts, so many facets of his music. But to me, his rhythm guitar
Yep.
playing is the thing that put him on a step above everybody else because it's
Oh, absolutely.
so subtle, right? It's
Absolutely.
just like, and it just these little things just drive the band. A little note, one little rhythm note there, and the whole band just
Oh
jumps.
my
It's
gosh.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah, Tony was one of those rare individuals who, um, if you were playing with Tony and it was time for your solo, he was going to make you better than you knew you could ever be. And JD Crowe was like that too. And I don't know whether Tony picked up on that from Crowe, and then that sort of became their thing. Sam Bush is like that. There and Dole is like that. There's these people that you play with. They make you better, or they make you play better than you ever thought you really could. And that's such a wonderful thing and such a talent, to be able to bring people up around you. But I know every break I've ever played with Tony, it's like, he made it easy for you to do your thing. He made it like falling off a log. And JD was the same way. When I'd go in to take a fiddle break, what Crowe was doing, it all of a sudden became so much easier to do whatever I wanted or needed to do on the fiddle. It became easier. And the same, I'll say the same thing about Tony, that they made it easy for you. And Clay's that way. When I go to take a break on the banjo or the fiddle, he makes it easy for, you to, okay, here's what I need to be doing. Let's go. And not every musician has that ability. Um, if I had one goal, that's my goal as a musician. I want to be that person that if people play with me, they can say, he made me better than I thought I could be, or he made it easier for me to be better. And I think that's the greatest thing a musician can have. Because let's be honest, we're usually not out there as a solo gig by ourselves. It's all a team effort. And anything you can do to help somebody else, that's what it's about. Because that comes back to you every time. It'll come back to you, you know?
yeah. I remember I interviewed a bunch of people that played with Tony. He played here a bunch too. I got to talk to him a little bit, but
Hmm.
I was talking to Jerry Douglas, and he said, when you played with Tony, you always played the best you ever played. Uh,
Yes.
you
Bingo.
know,
He said it all right there. He said it all.
yeah,
And
interesting.
and it's really weird. There's, like I say, there's this group of musicians that have that ability, and it's almost like you don't even have to have your instrument playing yet. They get their instrument out of the case and you're inspired. I could watch Tony uncase his guitar. I'm inspired. Before I even play, before he even does anything, I could listen to him tune his guitar. I'm inspired. I could hear Crowe tune the banjo. I'm inspired. I could watch Kenny Baker get his fiddle out of the case and I'm inspired. you know, and it's just wild. Bobby Hicks was that way. I could just watch him get his fiddle out or set and hold his fiddle. It's like, I want to play. And I don't know what that is, but they had it in spades, you know.
Yeah.
They had this way about them. And if you were lucky enough to see them play live, you couldn't wait to get home and get your instrument out. You know, I can't wait to get home and get my instrument out. I want to try to experience that, what I just experienced as a person in the audience. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's amazing. And you know what? The guys in the scene are like that. And I'll take Lou as an example. I can hear Lou sing and I'm inspired. He has a way of singing that um, I don't know. It's very inspiring. I can hear Fred play dobro on things, and it's inspiring to me. You know, maybe he'll do pick away, or he'll do those chimes like on Another Lonesome Day that Mike did on those albums. It's like, man, I'm so inspired. Uh, Ronnie is one of the greatest bass players. Um, he will follow you wherever you go. If you are feeling something and you throw a little new direction on a fill or something, he's right there. He hears it, he feels it, he's with you, and he's going to do something. And he's almost like Tony in that way. Tony was an avid listener as a musician. He was an avid listener. And man, when you listen, good things happen. And you hear what other people are doing or what they're going for. Um, when I'm playing live, I'm usually not listening to me. If yeah, I've got me in my ears, I've got the band in my ears, but when I'm listening as a unit, like I'm listening to a project, you know. And if I hear Fred do something, I'm like, okay, I hear you. I'm going to try to do something to elevate Fred if I can right there. Or if it's Lou singing, or if it's Clay's, rhythm or something, it's like, okay, I feel you, let's go. Um, and I think that's when the best music is ever played, is when that happens all around. I know it is.
Yeah.
And it's never perfect every day. You may have sound that's questionable. You may have your instrument maybe uh, kind of showing itself that day. It's not right or something. But I find on those days, even if it's like, let me take a step back here and listen and don't dwell on my own problems too much. Let's just, and I find a lot of times those days become a lot better. It's like, don't focus on your own issues, maybe, you know, let's see where
Yeah.
we're at as a unit here, and let's move on.
I've heard musicians say that so when you're playing in a band setting, obviously there's a lot going on
Oh
visually
yeah.
and sound wise every second. But they say sometimes when I feel like I'm not playing that well or sounding that well, usually in the crowd they're thinking, "Wow, he's sounding great," and vice versa. Like
Right.
you really don't know how you sound because you're hearing
Right.
the back of your sound, right? Kind of,
Right.
and then the audience is
Yeah.
hearing a whole different, which I guess you would never really know what they're hearing. I mean, recording, I guess, gives you an idea, but you really don't know until you hear a live music instrument in front of you what it really sounds like.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And part of the thing that can be well, the Del McCurry band uses like center mic situation where they got two or three mics and that's it. And they're all grouped very close. There is something to be said for that, because even if it's just singing like the New South did, where you came to the center to do the trios, it's so much easier when you're in proximity to your bandmates in that way. You start feeling things a little bit different. Um, you kind of feel their energy a little bit, in a weird way. Um, Vocally, the blend becomes better, regardless. Um, if you listen to the original Seldom Scene when they were doing the center mic thing, you know, coming around and singing together like the New South did, that blend uh, is as good as it gets. And I'm talking just live 2-track recordings that hadn't been mixed or anything. There's a blend there. There's a feel of the other people. There's phrasing. There's different things, and it causes you to look and listen in a different way. Same with the music. When I played with Crowe, I would normally 9 times out of 10, even though I had my own fiddle mic over here, I would go to the center to play my fiddle breaks because I wanted to feel those guys close and feel what they had going on. And uh, Crowe would always come to the center as well to back up the fiddle break. He loved it.
Yep.
And of course he was doing it with Jimmy Martin back in the day, and even the Kentucky Mountain Boys. But there's a thing, you're in closer proximity to your bandmates, and there's just that feel you get off of them that you can't duplicate when you're in a line and you're separated. um but yeah, some of the hard there's been some shows where we've had due to either weather or um small stage or whatever, we've had to change things around and do more like that sort of thing, and it's always good. It doesn't fall apart. Like, some bands are like, oh, we can't hear each other. It's like, yeah, you can. Take your ears out and throw them away, and let's get here and play. And it's really wild. The vocals, they have a different goody about them when you're together like that. You can
Yeah.
blend, you
Yeah.
know.
It's funny when you put it that way because I've been teaching kind of beginning bluegrass classes locally. So there's 5 or 6
Hmm.
people in each class. And so we sit around in a circle and we play and we learn tunes. But then
Yep.
as soon as they stand up together, the sound is
Yep.
completely different. It is
Oh, yeah.
completely like, oh my God, you're a band now. You're not just a people sitting
Uh-huh.
in around a chair. It's just, yeah. So I kind
Exactly.
of what you're saying, when you get together, the closer you can get, I think, the better. I mean, I know that's
Absolutely.
old school, but
Absolutely. It is. And, we have ears. So even when we're in line, it's like doing a session in a way, although, the sound can still be kind of funky live. But you've got enough, you can run your own mix and kind of mix everything. But there's still a little extra goodie when you can gather together and either do harmonies or your solos and you're backing up the other person or whatever. There's just a goodie about that. That's I know when Ronnie played with Tony for years. I played with Tony some later on. Tony, when I played mandolin with Tony always wanted basically my left elbow almost touching his right elbow. Like he wanted to be that close, and he wanted the bass right up there, that little section right there, right together as close, you know, real close proximity to each other. And it does make a difference. It to the listener, sometimes they might not be able to hear the difference, but there is one, and it comes across in the feel of things.
yeah. There's a very funny YouTube video of you and Warren Yates sitting there, and he's basically telling you that everything you play on the banjo is wrong. When you're playing up, you should be playing
Right.
down. You have a very good dry sense of comic timing. I will say that. That just cracked me
Oh,
up. I just was like, oh my God, how long can they keep this up? And it was just so funny. I
oh
thought,
well, I'll give Warren all the credit on that. He is one funny dude. He makes it easy to do that kind of stuff, actually. But we had a ball doing all kinds of different funny videos and whatnot. But yeah, he uh, he actually has done some comedy work live. Uh, he really, Warren's the kind of guy when he starts anything, he digs into it, and he's actually really great at that. But that was really funny. I think we were I think that was in Florida. We were on someone's front porch or something, and it was hilarious. It was
yeah,
hilarious.
because it started out for the average watcher, like, maybe he's learning something about how to play the banjo, go up near the bridge. And
Right,
then
right.
you realize after a while that everything you say is wrong. It's like,
Exactly.
it's so funny.
It's
So
totally
funny.
180 off. Yeah.
Which instrument is harder to tune and keep in tune, the banjo or the fiddle for you?
I'm going to shock you with this one. Um, there are times when the fiddle can be harder,
Mhm.
and let me explain why that is. Um, the weather can be such a huge factor on any instrument. What a temperature change on the banjo is drastic. Uh, One of the reasons that I say fiddle is the same kind of thing. I'll tune my fiddle before, after sound check, and I'll leave it on stage. If by chance the temperature changes out there, maybe they don't have the theater completely warmed up, and then 2 hours later, when you go on, your fiddle's been setting there, uh, and it's now in a whole new tuning. It's either at 438 or 445, part of the strings. The other thing is wintertime on the fiddles. Yeah, I try to keep them as humidified as I possibly can, but the pegs will dry out. The actual ebony pegs or boxwood or rosewood, whatever you have, they dry out. And if you go into, you know, a theater and it's really cold outside and they have the heat cranking, there's been times when I've picked up my fiddle, I'll go through the fine tuners and it's in tune. I'll start to play, and there's always that possibility a peg will just let loose and pop all the way down. Not a good feeling when you're in the middle of a solo. It's over at that point.
Yeah.
Someone's going to need to take it. So, two-part answer, I guess. There's times when the banjo is way harder, but there can also be really large factors on the fiddle too, that come into play. So, and if I'm playing it every song, fiddle, if I happen to be doing a whole set on fiddle, uh, then I've got it here the whole time, and I'm making a little minor, if I need to, adjustment. Where if it's setting back there for 2 hours, between sound check and show, a lot of environmental changes can happen. Now, here's my other. I'm going to go a step farther on this. We're talking about temperature change. The banjo. There's certain gigs we do sometimes, and you actually have to walk through maybe a hallway to get to your stage entrance. And so your dressing room is like 74 degrees, 72, 70. You walk out in this hallway and it's 62 or 60 or 55. And you walk 25, 30 feet in that temperature. And then you walk back up on the stairs. Maybe you're getting ready to go on stage. And you're back up to 70 degrees there. And your banjo is just throwing its hands up like, I give up. And, I'm always constantly like, okay, if we have that situation, it's like, all right, tell the MC, I'm trying to get a hold of the MC, like, give us a second here. Because all of us are probably out of tune at that point. If we've walked out into cold and then right back into hot, like the instruments have went nuts. And the last thing you want to do is go out there and hit the first song, and like there's 5 different tunings on stage and none of them are good, you know. But yeah, each one has its own thing, and every instrument changes with temperature. So it's not really just
Right.
a banjo fiddle thing, but they both can have their. And then there's the bow on the fiddle. So if it's damp outside, the bow keeps loosening up. So you're always constantly tightening, and then you run out of tightening. So I mean, you're just physically out of space. Okay, well, I can't get my bow tight. The thing you never want to do is if you've been playing out in damp conditions or cool night damp conditions, is put that bow back in the case and not have it completely loose, because as that dries out and heats up, that's going to get extremely tight, and that's bad on sticks. It'll warp a stick if you're not careful.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
I
word to
find,
the wise. I'm in the
yeah.
repair business, but I'm just trying
Okay.
to help.
Well, gotcha. You don't want to give them too many tips. You want to have customers.
Right. No.
I just find with guitar, because I have a very high metabolism, my body is warm, and guitar has a lot of surface area against my chest. So
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that really throws
Yep.
things out of whack, I find, with the guitar.
It does. Yeah, it can. The banjo is a little bit more insulated on the body because it has the metal L brackets that set on the resonator lip. So it's not actually connected to another wooden piece. It's connected through metal. So it's not as susceptible to that body heat. But a mandolin is for sure, you know. But yeah, I mean, I'm not telling you anything. Boy, you can run into some environmental awesomeness for your instruments. You may get a stage. And here's a note to promoters and festival uh, people who run festivals: possibly face your stage other than south or west, if possible. North or east is always a good way.
Yeah. Interesting.
Those afternoon shows where the sun's blistering in on stage in summertime, that can be dangerous on instruments, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you're in 90-degree temperature, but you've got the sun broiling on an instrument for an hour or whatever. That can get dangerous. Guitar bridge let. Uh, I've seen. I was actually on stage with Jesse Brock, and he was playing one of my mandolins, and we were playing this fairgrounds. It didn't have a cover on top of the stage, and it was the middle of the summer. And we're out there, and all of a sudden I heard this big pop, and I'm thinking, what instrument now just, came unglued? And it was my mandolin. The top seam came unglued from the heat. It let loose. And but yeah, I've known of guitar bridges letting loose during that. A fiddle neck can also pull if you're not careful. But yeah, please, promoters, north and east is a good way for that stage to face. It's a wonderful thing.
Gotcha. Let's go back in time a little bit. So if there's anybody in the history of music that you could have sat down and played with, who would that be? Maybe before your time, or someone you never got a chance to sit in with or jam
I'm
with.
going to make
Anybody?
this quick. Buck Owens and the Buckaroos.
Really?
Yes. That probably um, one of, if not my favorite all-time bands, singers together. That band was so special, and I would have loved to have played fiddle in that band. I mean, obviously, Don Rich played a very few things on fiddle in that band, but I would have loved to have played fiddle in that band. If you listen to the Carnegie Hall, live at Carnegie Hall, Buck Owens and the Buckaroos, um, Don was singing with Buck live, so he couldn't do the electric guitar fills. The steel did all of the electric guitar fills through the courses there, and learned the actual electric guitar fills. To me, that's just a band where, and that's not the only band, but I would, right off bam like that, it'd be Buck Owens and the Buckaroos. I would have loved to have played with that band.
You
They
did
were
fool me with
amazing.
that one. You fooled me with that one. I was not expecting that at all. Um, do you have a personal philosophy that you kind of keeps you active and looking ahead in your life? Do you have a religious or personal thing, or you just like to play music and
You
mm,
know, honestly, I think life is full of stages, and I think everybody arrives at certain stages at different times, depending on the person. But I think one of the things to me is when we can take me out of it and stop necessarily living life for ourselves, but living life for others as well, and trying to help, um, putting others first, if that makes sense. Yes, we've got to do what we have to do. That's, not saying that. But I think when that realization comes, like, you know what? This ain't all about me. Um, in a real funny way, it circles around and becomes better for you, to me. Um, I think that's in a band situation, that's one of the key ingredients is like, how can I help the band versus what can the band do for me? Um, I'm always asking myself the question, like, how can I help the band? Uh, what am I doing wrong, or what could I be better at, or what do I need to do more or less of? I want to help the band. And I think when you get to that stage, whenever that is, things get infinitely better very quickly, in a personal and professional way. But that's just me.
yeah.
So,
Well, I love that philosophy because I think our culture today is it's very much a me-oriented culture.
right,
And I
right.
think it only causes problems. When you
It
live
does.
for other people, it eventually comes back to help you anyways, but you
It
feel
does.
satisfied in doing it. I agree with you totally on that. Um,
Yeah. I think it's just, and like I say, um, I'm not saying my way is the right way. That's just me, but I feel like when you can, back up a little bit and go, you know what, this isn't really about me. This is about us, or this is about, can I help you today? Can I make your day better? And I tell my son that, and I have for years. I'm like, you know what? Hold the door for somebody. If you see somebody in a struggle, maybe they're even upset, help them, because your a little bit of kindness there, or just showing that somebody might care. You don't know what you might prevent from happening, or down the road, you don't know how that's going to affect right there. You know, uh, if you could sow a seed of some kind, it may grow into a tree. Uh, but do that, because we may never know what we've done, and that's okay. We're not doing it for the accolades, but we don't know what we might change, or prevent in some cases. Somebody might realize, like, okay, somebody, there's somebody who actually cares, or isn't just out for themselves or whatever. And I think that's an important thing in everyday life is, you know, hey, everybody has bad days. Um, if you can help somebody out of a bad day, you don't know how many bad days you might helped out there when it's all said and done. So, and I have bad days too.
yeah, of course, of course, of course. Um, of all the people in your musical life who have passed away, are no longer with us, who do you miss the most? Anybody that you
Ooh,
really wish were still around?
You know, it's hard to single out there. I miss them all. Um, but I'm gonna say a name that you may or may not be familiar with. I miss JD Crowe every day. I miss Tony. I miss, you know, the list goes on and on. I miss Steve Gully. I mean, there's just I miss Phil Ledbetter. But there was a fellow that I grew up playing with that my parents actually played with before I was born. His name is Lotus Dickey, and he was a fiddle player from here in Indiana, and he became kind of a thing on the folk scene shortly before his death, a few years before his death. But he was a master musician, and he was as country as it gets. Um, and he was always the same every time you saw him. He was a huge influence on me as a young person wanting to play, and I really miss him. I wish, in a way, I wish, there's times it's like, well, I wish I could say hey to Lotus, and here's what's been happening in my world, you know. But more importantly, just thank you for things you did for me, for help, um, for his playing still influences me now. His fiddle playing, he's still an influence on me, and I would say he's really one that I would love. Not that I wouldn't all, and it's hard to really single out one more than another, but he's been gone since the late '80s, so
Yeah.
he would be one I would love to be able to say, hey man, here's what's been going on, and thank you.
It's funny. It seems like you rarely get a chance to thank the people that really matter to you. You look back and say, boy, I wish I had talked to this person,
Yeah.
your father or whatever, just when they die,
Yep.
you think back, I wish I had had these conversations, or it's funny. I guess it's just life,
Yep.
right?
I think it's if we circle back to that what we were talking a while ago too about like um your philosophies or whatever. um I've tried to become that person who doesn't let life completely take away opportunities to either see or talk with somebody or just give them a message or whatever. Hey, thinking about you, hope you're doing well. Because you never know when that won't be there for you to do. And I think it's very important. And I think that goes back to that. Okay, I'm putting someone else ahead of me. I may be wore out. I may be so tired I can't breathe. But all right, let me just send this person a quick message. And we never know how that affects them too. Um, lets them know people are thinking about them, or whatever. And I'm not perfect in that regard, so don't take that wrong. But
Yeah,
I
no,
try to think
we all
about
try to
that.
do that, right? And it
Right.
inevitably, when you send even a text or a quick call to somebody that you haven't seen, or
Yep.
somebody that's older, it always
Yep.
always cheers them up. I found always,
Absolutely.
little as it might
Yeah, and I
seem
know
to you,
myself.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
And I know for me even, there's times I'll get a message. I'll be flying to gig, driving to gig, whatever. And a message will pop in from someone and be like, hey, I hope you're doing well. I haven't talked to you in a little bit. Just, you know, I hope you're doing well. Those things make my day, you know, especially when they're just out of the blue. There's no, I don't need you. I don't need, or, I'm not wanting anything. I'm just, hey, how are you doing? Hope everything's well. And those are wonderful.
yeah. Have you ever had a time in your life where you were discouraged enough to consider giving up playing music for a while, or has it been just a constant go go go?
Yeah, yeah. I'm. I don't know if there's any musician alive There might be a couple, but I think there's always times in every musician's life where, whether it be the rigors of the road, whether it be um, you're in a band that's not really working personally, or blah blah blah, or whatever the case may be, that hasn't said, boy, I don't know, is it time for me not to do this for a while or forever? Um, there's there's been twice that those thoughts have occurred to me, and both times really I have to sort of look at back at myself and go, wait, is this kind of my own doing in a weird roundabout way, because I didn't maybe do what I should have done before it got this bad, or before, whatever the case was, got to a point of that. It's So to answer your question, yeah, there's been a couple times where that thought has passed through my mind, but it quickly resolves as soon as you figure out the problem. Like, you know what? No, it's not, music isn't the problem. It's something else involved with it, or, some angle of it. I need to fix that. And then, okay, we're off to the races again. And I'm still excited to play. I love to play. But yeah, um, there have been a couple of times, but it shouldn't be misconstrued as like, well, I'm just now playing to play. No, I'm playing because I love it. I wouldn't do that. Uh, I don't ever want to be that person that just plays to play. And I'll tell you something else. I respect JD Crowe so much for so many things, but when he told me years ago, like, when I can't do it, or when I feel like I can't do what I need to do, I'm done. And you know what? When he felt that way, he was done. That was it. I'm out. And I have a huge respect for that. And I've always told myself that, like, okay, when that point comes to where I can't play where I think I should, I'm out. I don't want to put others through having to deal with me, not being able to
Right.
play, and I also don't want to put myself through that, because it can be a serious mental game. And I just don't want to ever be that person,
Yeah.
uh, for everyone involved.
Yeah. I remember, I know Tony Rice struggled with this for a long time in his life,
Mm,
because obviously his hands and fingers were
mm,
not capable of doing what he wanted to do for a long time. Forget about the
right.
singing.
Yep.
But he did persevere, with different band members, and he had Josh come in and do all the singing, which was a big boon. And I
Hmm.
think he got to the point too where he just said, look, this is just not, I can't
Right.
entertain, I can't play anything that I want to
Hmm.
play. I'm done. And I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard to do that at maybe the right time in your life, because you want to keep
Right.
playing. I mean, that's what you do, right? You
Right.
love to play. It's all you ever did.
Exactly.
To stop it
Yep.
is like, oh my God, that's it. It's over. I
Yeah.
understand the
Where from
struggle.
here? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I mean, as a musician, if you're really into music and you've dedicated, a large chunk of your life, um, which for most professional musicians has been their whole life, maybe minus 3 to uh, 10 years, their
Mhm.
whole life.
Yep.
Um, when you go through decades of doing this, and that becomes a part of you, it's sort of like being married to someone for decades and then they're gone. There's a hole there, a monstrous hole. Um, and I'm not looking forward to that day. It's coming for all of us, but by the same token, I want to be that person that goes, you know what, I can't do this. I don't want to put others through it, and I don't want to put me through it. So now I'm going to do something different. I'm going to whatever. Uh, but yeah, I have a deep respect for anyone who recognizes that and says, okay, I'm out. I'm going to find something else to do now.
Right.
Not that their love stops for it, or you can even go into different segments of the industry, you know, and that's probably me. If my hands get to a point of where they're not cooperating, I've got my repair business, I engineer, you know, um, I'm sure I'll be in a version of the business, uh, so it'd be like stopping one, but the other two continue, you know.
Right. And you've always got the backhoe.
I've got the backhoe. I do in the
Always
dump truck.
find something to do for a few weeks if it's not the
Right. And I've got a chainsaw too. I use regularly. So
so
there's that.
you're good to go. So my last
Mhm.
question. This has been a great interview. I've enjoyed talking. You're
Oh,
obviously a
you
real
too.
you're a real student of bluegrass. I can tell that about you. So, how do you see your role in kind of preserving bluegrass music that you love and play? How do you see your role as kind of keeping the tradition going, or I don't know,
Oh man.
the history of it, kind of?
It's hard for me to think of me in any kind of capacity like that. Um, I, get- I think if there's one thing, if I could choose something for me to pass on to um, anyone, it would be the heart in music. Um, Play with your heart, not what's um, popular or not popular or whatever. You need to play with your heart. Um, Ken Mellons and I were talking about that yesterday. If you know who that is, he was a country singer from the. Anyway, we met in Nashville and just kind of hung out a little bit. I'd worked on a fiddle for his wife, but we were talking. He cut a bluegrass album a few years ago, 10 years ago or so, and I played on it. But we were talking, and heart in music is everything, and you can equate that to any other profession. Be in it for the right reasons, and you know, do it for the right reasons. But keep that heart in the music. Don't just do it for a job. Don't just do it because it's cool. Anything you do, and that would be something I would want to, tell everyone. Like, you know, if you hear the people who are your heroes, they had heart in it, you know, and it wasn't just doing it to be doing it, you know. Um, I tell people if I'm producing someone's album, don't just be different to be different. If you like something, record it. It will show. It doesn't matter, um, whatever that is. If it's the coolest new thing and you love that, all right, let's do it. If you're just doing that though, to be the coolest new thing, don't do it. Do what you love. It always will be a winner, if you're doing the stuff that you love. It
Yeah,
shows.
yeah.
So,
Well, that's a good note, inspirational note to end on. I've enjoyed talking with you, hearing your thoughts, your philosophies. It's been
oh,
interesting. Someday I will. I've
well,
never met you, I don't think. Um, a lot of people that you
we
know
have to fix
have
that.
played here. Yeah. Um, yeah. I don't know how that is possible, but anyway, I wish you all the best with the new album and with your new guitar
Oh,
player,
thanks, Chris.
Clay, and everything else
Yeah.
that's going on. Yeah, it sounds exciting. And
Oh, it is. Hey, yeah, don't forget the album's out day after tomorrow. Um, it's LP form, CD. You can stream it. I recommend the LP. I really recommend the LP. It sounds great.
yeah,
I love LPs. Um,
me too. I do too.
they're so musical sounding. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
But yeah, um, yep. Get our new LP and tune into Chris here all the time.
Well, thank you again for coming on. And like I say, good luck. We'll catch up in person someday, I'm sure.
I hope so. I hope so, Chris. Thank you.
Okay. You too. Take care. I'm going to stop right now. Thanks.
Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast, and thanks for listening. Visit our website, guitartownct.com, for concert and podcast schedules, or just to send us a message. We'd love to hear from you.